Is it actually possible to fake or to pretend being a person with autism? And the answer to the question is, well, yeah, because Dustin Hoffman did it. Remember the movie Rain Man? And he was portraying somebody who was autistic. Not high functioning autism, not Asperger syndrome, but autistic. So yeah, you can fake it, you can pretend, you can fool people, but you can't do it forever. I mean, if you were to see Dustin Hoffman today, chances are he's not behaving like Raymond Babbitt. He's behaving like Dustin Hoffman. So think of taking a dog and you're going to teach the dog to dance on its hind legs. Yeah, he can dance for a while, but as soon as a squirrel runs by or a rabbit or whatever, or a mouse maybe, the dog is going to get off his hind legs and do what comes natural. So yeah, it's possible to fake being an Aspie. It's possible to fake having autism, but you can't do it for long. So what are the things about autism that we say are impossible to fake, but more accurately, we should say it's really difficult to fake? We got 15 of these, so we're going to have to go through them very quickly. But number one is people with autism tend to be unadaptable to change. We just don't like to change. We find a way of doing something that is most effective and the best way to do it, and that's the way it should be done. Why would we do it any other way? Now, there are other people, obviously, who are stuck in the mud or stuck in their ways, and maybe that's not quite the same thing. But as we evaluate processes and systems, we see that this is more efficient. This is more effective. So let's do it that way. Why would we change? Number two is people with autism tend to have a singular expertise at which they excel. There's one thing that they do really, really, really good. And there may be other things they do well, but there's one area of excellence, one area where they excel. They do better than anything else, and actually better than most anyone else. Now, we're going to talk about this in a moment, but you probably heard the story of the guy who was autistic, who was taken up in a helicopter and flown over New York City. And he took a look and he went back to his art studio, took out his pen, and from memory, he was able to draw the skyline. I mean, in absolute, positive, amazing detail. You just can't fake that. I mean, there are things about autism that even Dustin Hoffman couldn't do that. He could pretend to do it in an actor's studio, but no, you can't do that. Number three, think outside the box. This is something that maybe not unique to Aspies, but you got to stop and consider. If you are autistic, that means you live outside the box. You don't live in a social setting because you just are not adept, and so you do not adapt. So where are you going to go? Well, you're going to go outside the box. That's where you are. That's where your mind is. That's where your thinking process is. You live outside the box. And so you think outside the box. But people who are neurotypical, they think social thoughts. They don't have mind blindness. We're going to talk about that some more in just a moment, but mind blindness in the same sense that Aspies do. So yeah, they can think outside the box, but not like people with autism. Aspie being high-functioning autism, just to make that clear. Number four, it's hard to fake being as observant as an Aspie, as a person with autism, and I think that's pretty much for the same reason as we have a unique perspective. And I've talked about this before. But sometimes being observant can get you in trouble. At least it gets me in trouble now and again because I really got this bad habit of staring at people because I'm studying them. But in their context, in their neurotypical social context, staring at people doesn't mean you are studying them. It means you are somehow socially interacting with them, which is not a positive thing. That's not a positive way to interact with people. I'm not interacting with them, but they think that I am. And so I've got to learn not to do that. But the point is, it's almost hard, almost impossible to fake that level of observation where you just focused on something. I can go out in the backyard at night and I can stare at the moon probably for hours. I just think it's interesting. I don't do that, but I probably could. I could go out and look at the stars. If there's a little bug, crawling across the patio or wherever, I could sit down and watch that thing and study it. To me, it's kind of entertaining. It's kind of interesting, and your mind starts wondering, what is this thing? I'm really not into bugs, but I like to watch them. It's kind of odd. Well, how do you fake that? Maybe you can, but you can't do it for long. You like the dancing dog. You can imitate it, but you can't fake it. Number 5 is we tend to have unique perceptions and perspectives. And again, that's because our point of focus is outside the box. We're not inside the social box. We're outside of it, so we see things differently. I was watching a video on YouTube a couple nights ago about the cosmonauts and the astronauts early days of the International Space Station. And one of the things I think every single one of them loved to do was sit at the window and just look at the Earth. So they had this unique perception, and because of that, they had unique perspectives, because they could understand, at least from that perspective, how unimportant so many things are. The things that are so important to us, and now suddenly they become minuscule. They're just a scintilla of what we would think normally is vitally important. We're just a little dot. I mean, the planet we live on is just a tiny little dot in this expansive universe that is so expansive our mind cannot even comprehend it. Well, that is kind of normal. I mean, obviously, if you're in the space station so many miles above Earth, that's outside the box. I mean, how outside the box can you get? You're in outer space, or at least in space. So, I'm wondering here, we talk about people with Asperger's and autism having mind blindness in that we can't socialize, but who really is blind? So let's use this analogy. People on planet Earth are neurotypical people in this analogy. And the people on the International Space Station are people with autism. So the people on Earth see things one way, and the people in the space station, the people with autism, see it another way. The people in the space station are mind blind to how people on Earth see things. The people on Earth are mind blind to we can kind of imagine, but we're mind blind to how people in the space station see things. So it seems like mind blindness is not something that is unique to people with autism, but it's the type of mind blindness. So we have unique perspectives. We have unique perceptions. And because of that, we have the ability to see what blind people cannot see. We can't see social settings the way others, so they say we have mind blindness, but they can't see our perspectives. Yeah, I'm repeating myself, but they have mind blindness. We're the cosmonauts. We're the astronauts. Number 6, it's kind of hard to fake being reclusive. And again, you could do it for a while, right? You can go out on Golden Pond or wherever it is, and you could stay in a cabin for a year, but after a while, you want to come back home, right? You go out camping, maybe not a year, you go out camping for a few weeks. Okay, yeah, you could be reclusive for a while, but then I want to get back home. But a person with autism, that is, in most cases, many cases, and this is based upon my experience, by the way. Autodidactic study, my life's laboratory, my life's experience over the past nearly 70 years, and that is people with autism tend to be reclusive. So that's really hard to fake over a long period of time, like the dancing dog. You can do it for a while, then you got to come back down. People with autism tend to be organized. Now, they say that highly intelligent people tend to be messy. This would be the exception, because those with high-functioning autism are, by definition, individuals with average or higher than average intelligence. But they also tend to be not so messy. They like everything organized. Yeah, I know Aspies who are really messy. But they like spreadsheets. They like things in a row. They like to organize things by color. I know I do. My closet, I got it relatively organized. It's not perfect. You can look at my cabin behind me and you can see some things that, okay, they're not exactly perfect, but close enough, right? So we like to be organized. If you're not organized, you could try it, but chances are it's not going to last very long. Number 8 is we like sound pattern-based predictions. I should say people with autism tend to be good at pattern-based predictions. Now, people make predictions all the time. Conspiracy theories, I mean, how many of those are out there? Actually, they're conspiracy hypotheses, but that's beside the point. How many of those things actually occur? Well, sometimes they do, but usually it's, not because somebody predicted it, they just happen to guess right. But when it comes to people with autism, we like to make predictions that are based on patterns. We see this pattern, and we know that because this is the pattern, that we can predict the outcome. Now, talking about the movie Rain Man, remember that Raymond was a card counter? That's what that was. That was a pattern-based predictions. But then they took him over to the, his brother took him over to the roulette wheel, and he tried to use it there, but it didn't work. Now, there was another guy, I don't think they made a movie about him, but I watched a documentary about this guy, and he was able to predict the roulette wheel by the sound that it made. He could not precisely, but relatively predict. And I've never played roulette. I don't even know how it works, but I know they put a marble in it and spin it, and it lands on a particular number. And if you guess the number, I guess you win. And he could predict by listening within a reasonable scope, spectrum, where that marble would land. And he'd make several bets, and he would win over and over and over again, but they could never catch and figure out how he was doing it. That is because that was a pattern-based predictions. And for the record, I'm going to stay out of casinos because I don't have it, at least not to that extent. But how many people with autism do you know? How many people with Asperger's that you know who are really into conspiracy theories? I can't think of any because they're okay with predictions, but they want to see the pattern. They want to see the evidence. They don't want to hear somebody on the radio who is talking nonsense because, gets people's imagination going, and they're saying something that just is not there. It's all in their head. Number 9 is people with autism tend to be open to information and ideas, and again, that's something that's really hard to fake. Most people are not that open to information and other ideas. And again, I think the reason that we're open, and this sounds almost contradictory to what we said before, in that we don't adapt to change, but we do listen to ideas, and if necessary, we'll make a change. Now, with that in mind, let's stop and think about the Wright brothers who invented the airplane. So somebody was describing how these people thought, how the Wright brothers thought. And he said, may have been one of the Wright brothers that said this, I can't remember. But they were talking about two people who were trying to train a horse. One person would sit on the fence, make observations and make predictions, and do calculations and decide this is how you train a horse. And the other guy would just get on the horse, and he would learn that way. And he was saying that effectively the Wright brothers were the people who got on the horse. They took their contraption and their calculations a step further, and they actually applied them and made sure they worked, and that's how they learned. So they were open to information and ideas. And yeah, they would read and study what these other people wrote about the ability to fly, but they didn't work when they tried them. So they were open to those ideas. So they had openness. But we got to keep in mind that people with autism are open to information. We are open to ideas, but if they don't work, they don't work. They just don't work. Number 10 is unusual abilities. Well, we talked about that a moment ago. The guy who flew the helicopter or rode in a helicopter over New York City, and was able to remember the skyline, that is really exceptional. And I don't know, well, I don't know anybody who has that ability. I know of them. But lesser abilities, yeah. I know people with autism who have unusual abilities, unusual capabilities, but maybe not to that extent. Number 11 is people with autism tend to have expressive vocabularies. Why is that? I think, again, it's because we're thinking outside the box. Now, in the box, that's the social setting. So if you are in the box, you tend to think and speak in the vernacular, like everyone else is speaking. But when you're outside the box, you got better words. Other people sometimes know those words, but they don't use them because no one else uses them, and they sound kind of odd when they do use them. Well, outside the box, where people with autism live, we learn those words, we use those words, and people inside the box think we're a little weird, sounds a little strange. A few months ago, the neurologist sent me to the hospital to do a study. He wanted to have a baseline as I'm getting older so they could have something to compare my memory to, cognitive skills, so see if I'm getting off and how far I'm getting off. But they went through this process where, they ask you just 1,000 questions. And they said that one of the things that you really, really excel in far more than everyone else, well, not everyone else, but, most people, is your vocabulary. You just know these words. They would read you a list of words and you could pronounce them and you could define them and you understood what they meant. And I think maybe that's why a lot of people with Asperger syndrome, with autism, tend to make good writers because, we are good at expressing ourselves. In my opinion, number 12 is we tend to have, people with autism tend to have a good memory. That is to say, they're really, really good at remembering dates. You absolutely, positively cannot fake that. I mean, if somebody can't remember dates, you can't pretend that you remember dates, right? Now, when it comes to my autism, this is one box on the checklist that I didn't check because my memory is not that good when it comes to remembering dates. I know my birth date, I know my wife's birth date, and I know July the 4th. Those are the 3 dates that I know. But most people with autism, Asperger syndrome, really good with dates. So if you're the exception to that, or if you're not the exception to that and you have autism, you might want to let others know in the comments section. Number 13 is we are driven by what I call inside inspiration. I've never seen a study about this. This is just my personal observation. But it seems to me that people who are autistic and they're driven to excellence, it's got to come from inside of them because they have no outside. It's not because of social influence, because they have no social life. It's all got to come from the inside. I mean, they make observations, right? But it's not because somebody is motivating them. It's self-motivation. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many things that are innovative and inventive come from the minds of people who have autism. Number 14 is, we talk about this a lot, so we're just going to mention it, and that is nonverbal communication. People with autism just not good at recognizing facial expressions. People mad, they don't know they're mad. People happy, they don't know they're happy. People with autism just don't seem to have that ability. That's part of mind blindness. Now, that's another checkbox that I didn't check because I'm relatively good at, telling a happy face from a sad face and a mad face from a frustrated face. I'm pretty good at that. So that's one box that I don't check and I can't fake it. Then number 15, finally, we'll just mention this one very briefly, but how do you fake stimming? When you take that nervous energy and you're flapping your hands or you're rocking back and forth, which is what I do all the time, or you're scratching something, rubbing something, or feeling fabric. Well, how do you fake that? Because it seems to be subconscious. I mean, you could fake it again for a short period of time, but you can't do it forever. There are 2 rectangles on the screen. Let's keep on talking. If you care to, all you got to do is click one of those 2 rectangles. Our conversation will just keep on going. But if not, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see y'all next time.